Welcome to the Development Review Commission, May 9th. The Development Review Commission is created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has the power to recommend and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, business, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interests of the public health, safety, and general welfare. I'd like to introduce the commission members that are with us tonight. To my left is Andrew Johnson, Phil Amorosi, Scott Sumners, Vice Chair David Lyon, and Nick Labate. I'm Linda Spears, Chair, and we are missing one commissioner tonight. Staff, we have Cynthia Jared, Diana Kaminsky, and Suparna Gupta. The first item on our agenda is the study session and regular meeting minutes from April 11th. These were discussed at pre-session, and there are no changes. I'll accept a motion to approve. Vice Chair Lyon.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the study session minutes for study session April 11, 2017.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Amorosi. All those in favor? That passes 5-0 with Commissioner Labate not in attendance for that. The next item on our agenda is Hayden Lane Lofts.
Madam Chair, the motion was only for the study session. We need a motion for the regular minutes.
Let's try it. Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes for the DRC April 11, 2017 meeting.
Second.
Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved by Vice Chair Lyon, seconded by Commissioner Sumners for the approval of the regular session meetings. All those in favor? And that passes 5-0. Now, we'll have the Hayden Lane Lofts.
Good evening, Commission. I'm Diana Kaminsky, City of Tempe Senior Planner. Tonight we're looking at the Hayden Lane Lofts project. Do I have the remote for? No. Oh, it's on the table. Property is located on the south side of Hayden Lane, east of McClintock Drive, south of University, and north of Apache. It's an R3 zoned property. It has an R1 PAD that came in several years ago that changed some of the setback requirements for this lot. So even though it's had the zoning for R3 for a long time, with the R1 PAD, it required a buffer to the south side, which has provided a little bit of a challenge in their site layout. The site includes two individual lots that are shared with a common drive that was never formally recorded. The house on the west side is proposed for demolition, had its own drive at one point in history. It's had a shared drive for quite a long time with the house on the east side and the duplex to the south of that house. The proposal is to keep the property on the east with the existing residences, upgrading it for parking and landscaping to tie into the new development on the west side. So they're working within the development standards for an R3 development. The request is for a development plan review only. They would be 4 units. They would be 1 bedroom with a single car garage and surface parking to the south of the units. Site plan shows the orientation with the garages and the main doors facing east. The west side would have a balcony with the HVAC unit on the second floor. There are balconies overlooking the east side drive. Front landscaping to the street would be uniform between the two lots. They've provided landscape buffers on both the east and west sides in the narrow side yard setbacks, and then an additional requirement for a landscape buffer to the south adjacent to single-family uses. These are the floor plans. It's an open plan on the second floor with a loft area that looks down, has a balcony that looks down into the court area, the voter court, and then the upstairs bedroom. What's shown on the left is the existing single-family house that would remain. The architectural style is different, but ties into some of the more box-like forms that you see to the south with the R1 PAD single-family property. And then they've done a gabled pitched roof, which ties into some of the other gabled pitched roofs. So they're kind of doing a hybrid between different architectural styles to tie into the surrounding area. The proposed brick wainscot would be to match the existing house, and the duplex to the south of this house would be painted to match the stucco proposed on the primary building of this structure. Landscape plan includes a combination of Desert Museum Palo Verde, willow acacia, and acacia mulga for trees and a variety of plant materials. A very small palette because it is a small site and they're looking to try to unify the properties with their plant palette. Staff is recommending approval of the request and we'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Commissioner Amorosi.
Yes, excuse me, Diana, did the property owner on the west of this property, are there any comments from that person?
That is to the west of this development?
Yeah,
I've received no comments from anyone on the project.
thank you.
Other questions of staff? Seeing none, then we'll call the applicant up.
Yes, I'm the applicant. I'm Mark Clymer, Mark Architecture.
Is there anything you'd like to tell us about the project?
Oh, no.
Are there
If you got any questions, I'll answer them.
I had requested elevations that showed the what the project was going to look like in detail. Do you have anything that has that?
You saw the elevations I provided with color, and that's pretty much, I don't know what else you mean by detail.
Any other questions? Commissioner Labate?
Just to confirm, what I see here, the new elevations sheet, I guess we're looking at it right there. That the top elevation is indeed, that's the North Street elevation. That's what would be seen from the street.
The top
Is that
one,
right?
yes, that's what faces Hayden, yes.
Are those small square windows, is that a garage right there?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
To tell you the truth, that's not quite the newest one. Maybe it is. On the far right,
Would you use the microphone, please?
yeah, I just can't see that far. So, yeah, I really can't. Okay, on the far right, in the final version, we had to put a fire reservoir in there, okay? So instead of a window. So it just takes up a little bit of room in the laundry, and there's a door on the far right.
Okay, and so as I look at what looked like kind of a street perspective, it looked like there's actually a wall that goes, I see that door in there, but then that there's a wall of some height that then runs to the, let's see, whatever that would be, to the east or whatever the short property line distance is there. That's to the east, I think. Is that right?
Okay, I'm looking at this. You're talking about the
Yes,
top
sorry.
perspective?
Yeah, it looked
Okay,
like.
yeah, I just put the wall in the fence that's going to be there anyway. But, yeah, we got to build one.
Okay. Well, how high would that? Is that like a 5-6 feet, or is that like I can't tell from there what that, if that's a low wall or.
That'd be 8. It's 8, yeah. So yeah,
Okay. Okay.
there's like 4 different heights of fences on each side of this property. There is an 8-foot fence on the back where they did that new project.
Okay.
I have a question for staff. It was the indication that there's another drawing. Do you have more recent drawing than what we have?
I don't recall, I've had multiple submittals. Let me see. I do have a black and white that shows the fire riser door facing the
Yeah,
street.
that's-
So I can put that up on the overhead.
From also materials question, based on the material board, that's an unfinished railing, fencing for the patios. Is that going to then rust? Is that
No.
what you're anticipating? Or would you agree to a stipulation that be required to be coated so it does not rust?
To tell you the truth, I think it'd be a waste of money to paint it, and the paint would peel off eventually before that thing starts rusting. So that's not corrugated steel, that's stainless steel. Or whatever.
The wire fencing is stainless?
Yeah, it's wire mesh, yeah.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, I just had a clarifying question. In your project description that was provided with our packet, that was written by you, I believe, it
Yeah,
says
so-
the unused covered pool will be filled with engineered fill and a new tandem parking installed at that location. I don't believe that the drawings reflect tandem parking there. Is that a change?
Yeah, what we're showing now is not tandem. Yeah, it's just 2 parking spaces right there.
Okay.
And then some extra landscape and some bicycle parking right there. We were going back and forth on needing that parking, and it was just a tough spot. I actually feel that, well, we got more landscape, so it's more cooling factor from the landscape. And so at some point in the future, just for the people that live there, they might want to go through the process to pick up more parking. So that's all my thought was there. But it's just 2 spaces not covered right now.
Okay, so there is no request for a use permit for tandem parking. That was removed, is that correct?
Nope.
There is no request for a use permit.
All right. Yeah, other questions? Commissioner Sumners?
Just a question, and I'm not sure if this is for applicant here or staff, but there's mention of a need for a cross-access easement in case the 2 parcels are sold independently. Is the intent to develop this as one development, or could the 2 be split and developed at different periods in time?
Well, actually, the truth is the client owns both parcels. He bought them as 2 things, but we only want to develop this one side right now because there's the other side has the income-producing stuff anyway. And if someone comes in or if he later wants to do that, then yes. There is shared access for parking, right? They're not individually parked. It's shared parking, as I understand.
Yes, the site has an informal situation now. They happen to be owned by the same person, and they happen to share a drive, but it was never recorded. With this application, they are being required to record that shared access and the shared drive. In order for, if the other site were to try to redevelop, they would only be allowed 1 additional unit based on the size of that lot. So-
Basically duplicate what's happening. That's what this is about.
But the intent as presented is to develop the entire thing as one development at the same time?
No, just this one side, just the new development. Oh, yeah, I mean, we got to do landscape all over everything. We got to do parking over on the other existing side. But the 1965 brick house, actually all that stuff on the east side was all built in 65, 64. And the 2 apartments and the house are going to remain. And then at some point in the future, they may come back and go through this process again. Somebody might. He might.
Thanks.
Other questions? Vice Chair Lyon?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, the space on the west side, this west lot. west yard that you have captured by your 8-foot block fence. And I'm trying to imagine what that space is going to be like. I know you've got landscape in there. I've seen the landscape plan. I don't see any egress into that space. And I'm just concerned that that becomes kind of a dead space and a magnet for problems. Would you care to respond to that?
Yeah, sure. There's a gate up on the north and there's a gate at the south. So yes, there's access for the for the occupants to do stuff there, horseshoes, whatever. Okay. It is going to be an HOA, so it will be managed and maintained. Right now, it's kind of, we are going to have, I think, electrical meters along that side, so we do have to have access for utilities and fire to get back in there. And so, and it's only, 10 feet wide with the fence coming in on our side. So it's from here to here. It's 8 feet and 9 feet. It's not a big space at all. And we have a whole bunch of plants and retention in there also, some retention area.
Yeah, and that's kind of what gives
And
me
no
pause a
grass.
little bit. What's that?
No grass. Yeah.
Is it DG in there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, being that it is a small space and there's not much in the way of eyes on the space, I just wonder how much use it can really get, and I wonder if it becomes a problem. And then my other question has to do with the living, sleeping spaces. I was looking at this and I was wondering, how would you classify these as far as how many bedrooms is each unit?
Each one is a one bedroom.
Okay, so that's the part I wasn't sure how to get my head around is in order to be a bedroom, it has to have a fire egress capable window, correct? And I'm looking at these spaces and I'm thinking, if you count the entire second floor as a bedroom, okay, then you get that. But where do you actually put your bed, and where do you actually lay furniture out? And if I put my bed at the north of one of these bedrooms, then on the one side I've got the covered patio, on the other side I've got mechanical and the bathroom. And I'm looking for the windows. There's not much in the way of windows there. And I just, I feel challenged about what it would actually be like to use this space. Is that something that you'd care to respond to?
There's plenty of room to put beds, different size beds. Doesn't have to be a king bed. And then there's quite a bit of light coming in from the west, and there's south light coming in from the clear stories up high. And so, and also, this whole loft thing, to tell you the truth, I stole the design from my brother-in-law, did this in 1974 in Alaska. It looks pretty much like his loft that he first built for himself. He was an architect. So I stand there down below and look up and I see the loft, and you can put the bed anywhere you want in there, and there's all kinds of places.
And you say there's a lot of light coming in from the west?
No, from the south, from the clear stories that are up high, that angled thing,
Oh!
it's got windows on the end of it.
I don't know if we have anything that tells us that was a clear story. I didn't realize that was the case.
Yeah, you got to look at the section. And then from the east side, you got the big window.
I apologize. We look at these so small. It's
Diana, the question about the egress, emergency egress, is that something that staff has looked at and considered? I know building safety would have to weigh in on that, but
it's not
It's
shown in
something
the
that
section.
building safety would look at, and I believe they have a door that goes out to this
doesn't show it.
balcony on the second floor. I'm not a building safety expert, but I know building safety staff did review this through site plan review.
oh, it's the door going out on the balcony that is the
I believe so.
egress.
Yeah, that's what we're.
They didn't
referring to as a
identify
clear
it
story.
specifically, but they didn't raise any red flags that there were problems with this layout.
Okay, other questions, comments? If not, then we'll call to the public if there's anyone here wishing to address this case. I don't have any cards from anyone. Is there anyone in the public? If not, we'll close the public hearing. And any comments from commissioners? Vice Chair Lyon.
I'm sorry, I very much dislike this project. That may be separate from how I vote, but I do believe that these are going to be dark, difficult to use little spaces. I am concerned about that western yard. The clear story windows, it's now been clarified, are referring to these 3 small windows, I believe is what we're talking about. I just don't think they're very nice spaces. That being said, I'm not sure how I'll vote on them.
Commissioner Sumners.
Thanks. I appreciate Commissioner Lyon bringing up the side yard, the protected, enclosed area that's DG over on the west side. And I'm frankly concerned if I were to live there that that might be an attractive place for some things to happen that I wouldn't want to have happen in my backyard. So I don't know if I'm going to be supporting this. Thanks.
Any other comments? I guess I'm having problems getting my head around what this looks like. Unfortunately, I just don't see. I do have an issue with the railings, the enclosure not being coated. Even if it's steel, it will rust in Arizona, and it doesn't take 10 years to do that. So I just, I'm not crazy about the design, so I guess it's my comments. But with that, I'll entertain a motion. Someone has to make a motion. Commissioner Amorosi.
I make a motion to approve the Hayden Lane Lofts PL 170081.
For a second? It's been moved by Commissioner Amorosi and seconded by Commissioner Johnson for the approval of the Hayden Lane Lofts. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? And that fails 2-4. With Commissioner Labate and Commissioner Johnson supporting it and the rest in opposition. Sorry.
Madam Chair, we'll need a motion in the affirmative to,
To deny?
yes.
Okay. Or continue? Can we do that? Can we make a motion to continue if the applicant wishes to work on some of the issues and bring it back to us? Is that something?
If the applicant wishes to continue the process.
Is that something the applicant is interested in doing? Having a, is that something you want to do to address some of the issues that have been raised?
I don't understand what the exact reasons that you're denying the project. We went, all the architects, engineers, civil engineers, these are local professionals that have passed this. If you have any professional reason, besides aesthetics, it meets all the fire code, it meets all the regulations that we've been working with Diana Kaminsky very hard in the last 7 months. For you just to arbitrarily deny just because you don't like the project. It provides affordable housing for one bedrooms for the infill project. I need to know what is the outstanding reason that you don't like the project or that doesn't meet any code requirements. I need to know an exact fact why you're not passing it.
2 of the commissioners have concern about the dead space that is on the west side of the building that is has the opportunity for homeless to be there for whatever because let me finish. So the residents don't have access to that back directly. It's also the fact that we did not receive renderings that show what this is going to look like. We can't guess. And part of our responsibility here is to address design. Staff makes recommendations based on what the code, what the planning requirements are, but we represent citizens, and design aesthetics are important to us. And so to say that you've met everything, we represent the citizens of Tempe, and 4 of our opinions are that this is not the project, the way we see it is not what we'd like to see in your
Okay,
neighborhood.
so you're saying the west side is the only obstacle to approving this project? We worked with Diana to get that cleared. We felt that it was the safest things for fire access, for health and safety, was paramount to everything else. And is that the only reason that you're saying the west side, or what else? I need to know exactly why you're denying, except the west side. What else? What is the other issues that you're?
Design aesthetics. So we don't really know what this is going to look like because we didn't receive renderings that represent what this project looked like. We have a sketch, kind of. We don't know what the colors look like together other than from a board. Those are the issues. If you would like to work with staff and come back to us with another proposal, we can make a motion to continue the case, and you can come back.
Well, of course, I wouldn't like to kill the project, but I would just like to know what I have to address, or what's been going on is that there's been a moving goalpost.
And I
with
think-
Diana and with I'm not seeing any hard things besides the colors. I need something in writing that what you need, that you exactly want from us, and I could meet that. If you want fences on the back west, then with Diana, she has to agree with it.
Diana, do you understand what the commission is looking for, and you can communicate that?
Well, the side yard setback is something that's a code requirement. So they have 10 feet that they can work with. It's not like we can enlarge that area, but certainly access from the units is something that could be added. There were a lot of comments that came through site plan review, including orientation of the unit to face the street front, the size of windows. There were some other things that had been discussed. So we can certainly go back and look at some of those earlier comments. And if you have other suggestions in terms of materials or form that you're concerned with, the clerestory window size is something I think we can look at. So I have a general idea, but certainly any more things that you'd like us to take a look at, I'm happy to do.
All those things are doable. They're not that.
Okay,
But
so-
it's just that we didn't know. I apologize for anything, the interpretation, but this is a fairly cookie cutter. They're condos. They're the same size. They're uniform. The size is fine. It's usable. It's affordable housing. So I mean, I can meet whatever guidelines you have, but I need to know exactly
Okay,
before we come back.
so I'll entertain a motion to continue this case, and 2 weeks, you want to come back in 4 weeks? Okay, so we'll do a date-specific 4 weeks?
Well,
come back to
I don't
us?
know if we could meet, your meetings are every 2 weeks, so it's in 2 meetings. I think we need at least 3 meetings, maybe
Okay,
6
that's
weeks.
fine.
Madam Chair, because this is a development plan review.
We don't
and
need a date.
there's no actual postcards and other mailings. That needs to be done where some
Okay.
other staff attendance. So you can continue to a date unspecified,
Okay.
and then we'll just come
Okay.
back when the applicant is ready to come
All
back.
right, so we'll continue, we'll make a motion to continue the case, and then the specifics will be communicated to Diana.
Okay.
And
that's
then
fair.
she
Thank
can
you
work
very
with
much.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, so.
Thank you very much.
I'll entertain a motion to continue this case. Vice Chair Lyon.
Madam Chair, I move that we continue case PL 170081 Hayden Lane Lofts to be brought back to us when the owner feels ready to do so.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Vice Chair Lyon, seconded by Commissioner Labate, that this case be continued. All those in favor? Oh,
If I may, just real quick, I apologize to not bring it up earlier, but one other concern that I would like to see addressed is that there was some inconsistency between the plans. One, there's doors shown here, not shown there, walls shown here, not shown there. I think just making sure that all of that is consistent across all the submitted plans would be helpful so that we do know exactly what is proposed and can approve or deny it at that time. But that's my only discussion on the motion.
okay, all those in favor? Opposed? So that motion passes 6-0. So just work with staff to and get that taken care of. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the general plan amendment and rezoning for the ASU Athletic Facilities District.
Madam Chair and members of Commission, this is a request for a master planning of ASU athletics facilities districts for a map amendment for general plan land use, projected land use and projected density map and rezoning. The site is generally bounded by the Sun Devil Stadium and Veterans Way on the west, Tempe Town Lake on the north, McClintock on the east side, and University on the south side. The project is partially within Transportation Overlay District and Station Area, and it's the whole site that is proposed is also completely within the Rio Salado Park Overlay District. The applicant is requesting, there's 3 separate requests as part of this application. One is the general plan land use change from a map amendment change from public open space to mixed use, and projected land use density map amendment from no density to the high density urban core. The second for that is for approximately 20 acres. The second request is general plan projected density map amendment from high density to high density urban core for about approximately 83 acres, and then a zoning map amendment for approximately 274 acres from various different zoning requests or zoning designations to mixed-use educational. This is the first phase of the application. Subsequent phases will come to the city for establishing an overlay district with some development and design standards. A neighborhood meeting was required for this application. The neighborhood meeting was held on February 7th of 2017. Some of the major concerns that were raised by the people who attended were related to traffic, parking, public service such as police and fire, types of residential development that is being proposed as part of this master planning effort, and questions related to the fees and taxes, as all of this property is actually owned by the Arizona Board of Regents. Staff recommends approval of this project, subject to the one condition about the rights and remedies form for the rezoning application. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff? Seeing none, the applicant make the presentation.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Manjula Vaz, law firm of Gamage and Burnham. I'm here tonight on behalf of Catellus to talk about who's the master developer of the ASU Athletic Facilities District. Saparna did a nice job of doing my portion of the presentation, so I'm going to do my portion pretty quickly, and then Brian Kearney with Catellus is going to talk a little bit about the master planning efforts that are ongoing. But when we were here 2 weeks ago, some of the commission members wanted to talk a little bit about transportation and some of the bicycle and multimodal paths we have through the district. While you're not voting on them tonight, we wanted to at least give you a brief presentation of how we're working on kind of do the whole district. As Saparna said, this is the athletic facilities district and defined in the area in red. As for part of the first phase, we are coming to you with a request to rezone this land into a zoning category called MUED, which is mixed use education. You've seen me here in the past asking you to do MU4, which is what I would, if this was not owned by Arizona State University, a private developer would probably come here asking for MU4 to do kind of a high density mixed use project, which is what the general plan calls for on the lake. But to start the process, we would like to rezone all of this to MUED for the, so that we can move forward with development. As Sapana said, in the general plan, the golf course portion there, which is labeled A in kind of the green portion here, was designated open space. As part of this request, approximately 20 acres we're asking will be redesignated as mixed use to match the rest of the district so that we can start to develop some potential office space or other uses in that area. So that is our first general plan request. There will still be a portion of the golf course here where the athletic village currently resides. Currently, if you are there, the indoor football stadium is there, softball fields are there. Eventually, track and field will be moved over, and the tennis courts will be moved over as the district develops. As we all know, the district is probably a 20 to 30-year time frame, so it's going to happen over a period of time. All of this is not going to appear tomorrow. We want to start the planning process so at least we can start moving towards kind of the master planning efforts that have been going on. The second portion of the general plan request is to take in here there is no density assigned to the golf course, which was designed as open space. So we would first like to, for this portion of the golf course area, we were changing to mixed use, assign a residential density of greater than 65, which is similar to the rest of the lake area. And then for what is actually like the back nine and this portion of the golf course, also change that density, which is now up to 65 to greater than 65. So basically all of this lake area will have the same residential density reflected in the general plan. And Sapana went through the application. Currently, the site is mainly GID, and there's some portions that are MUED, and then MU4, and then this portion on the far east is Ag. We'd like to put everything into MUED. What that does, it not only it is the zoning category that's kind of defined in the zoning code for Arizona State, but also it allows us to go out to the development community and have a simplified process. You know, this process is the JRC. They understand we'll be going through the staff, and then we can just go through the process and start moving some projects through as we work through kind of the whole district area. And I'm going to turn this over to Brian, talk a little bit about, as we develop the district, kind of some of the guiding principles that we're looking at in terms of the master planning, and talk a little bit about the grid and transportation principles we've been using.
Thank you, Manjula. Madam Chair, members of the Commission, I'm Brian Kearney with Catellis Development. As Manjula said, we're the master developer for the Athletic Facilities District. I will be brief as well. The slide in front of you is meant to really convey, I'm not going to go through each of these guiding principles, but it's meant to convey the fact that we're not doing this in a vacuum. We have set we do have an established set of guiding principles that is really aimed at communicating that this is a forward-looking, technologically advanced, sustainable, mixed-use, connected community. That's the premise under which all of our planning efforts are taking place. And while clearly we believe that the type of development that we're proposing in terms of the entire district is very appropriate for a landlocked community that needs infill development in order to continue to thrive, we do recognize that mobility is a very important issue to address in an urban mixed-use community such as this. So we spent a lot of time working on a multimodal type of plan, type of community, by looking at a variety of different mobility options, the details of which are still being finalized, but I thought I could give you a pretty good idea tonight of where we're headed. I guess first and foremost, one of the most common questions we get relates to vehicular traffic, obviously. So we've spent a lot of time working internally with our planners and with city staff as well on a street system that focuses both on creating additional opportunities to connect to the regional transportation system, such as an extension of Dorsey Road from Dorsey Lane, excuse me, all the way from University to McClintock here on the east, and obviously providing access to the freeway here. Additionally, we are creating a major east-west thoroughfare we're calling 4th Street here that will connect the new extension of Dorsey over to Packard here on the west, so providing mobility from east to west across the district. The existing arterials will obviously stay in place. We will make certain improvements to intersections in terms of right turn lanes and additional left turn lanes and those types of improvements. And then we've added a new grid system within the area to create options for interior circulation within the district to help relieve some of the pressure off of the major arterial streets that surround us. So a lot of effort on the vehicular side. We've also spent an extensive amount of time working on an interconnected bicycle path network throughout the district. In many cases, we are planning protected bike lanes. In some cases, they are bike lanes that are in the street as a typical bike lane would be. But we've spent a lot of time looking at each and every street and each and every cross-section of each street to figure out the best solution for bicycles in terms of where they should be and how they should be designed with the intent, again, similar to the vehicular circulation system, to allow people to access areas both within the district as well as access areas that are outside the district, be it the lake itself, be it light rail, the campus, or the surrounding commercial areas around us. And then finally, with respect to pedestrian circulation, I'm using the open space plan here to illustrate this. Again, we've spent a lot of time working with the planners and with the city looking at pedestrian circulation that allows people to access, again, whether you're starting at the light rail or starting from the research buildings, but access the district in a protected manner. We've got a number of linear park type environments that run both north-south and east-west, ultimately connect to the lake. These are not just walking paths that can be used for livability in terms of jogging and so forth. So what we've really focused on is trying to create a very livable urban mixed-use community as we move forward. And as I said, many of the details still being finalized, but hopefully this gives you a good sense of how we're trying to deal with this within the framework of a set of guiding principles that take us to this forward-thinking multimodal community. So, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I just have one question. Where are you in the approval process for this plan with the Board of Regents and, or, you know, ASU, whoever has to approve this?
Madam Chair, we have approval from the Board of Regents for the plan that we are proceeding with now. We have some flexibility within a set of parameters that they've approved to deal with the details of the plan, but we do have approval from the Board of Regents for the plan that we're proceeding with.
And as was stated, this is a long-term plan. Who will approve changes to this plan?
Our immediate client is, of course, ASU, and so ASU would be an approval level. If there were changes to the plan that went beyond the parameters that were set by the Board of Regents in their original approval last year, then the Board of Regents would have to approve those changes.
Other questions? If not, we'll open up the public hearing, and then we'll give you a chance to come back and respond. So the first person in the audience, and if you'd like to speak on this and you haven't filled out a card, please fill one out. The first one I'm going to call is Philip Yates.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Philip Yates, and I'm the president for the Riverside Neighborhood Association, and I'm here to represent them. I had some questions as to, there was a meeting on February 7th, and there were 8 people that attended the meeting to voice their opinions about their concerns. There were a lot of concerns about pedestrian traffic in general, how streets were going to be put in place to help with the just getting around in the area. And some of that was addressed this evening earlier, but I think it could definitely have been done in a better way than was shown earlier up on the screen. But primarily, the biggest reason that I had a whole problem with everything was that there were only 8 people that went to this. And I don't even know how they knew about it. I was never informed that this meeting was going to take place. And I think that there should be a whole lot more input by the public and various neighborhood associations, people that live in and around the area. I would like to see a lot more participation in general, and people voicing their opinions about this project. And that's pretty much all I had for everybody. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Vice Chair Lyon.
Mr. Yates, would you tell us just a little more, what would you like to see different with regards to the transportation or the presentation of the transportation? What are you looking for?
Well, there aren't a whole lot of streets. We have the Rio Salado, and then the next street south of it is University. And then going from east to west, we have Scottsdale Road, Rural, and then the next big street is McClintock, and that's a big gap of space, and I would like to see just more streets, maybe sidewalks. Some of the things that we're wanting to be put in are businesses. I'd like to see more sidewalks going up to the businesses themselves. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any other?
Anybody else?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Trevor Barger.
Commissioners and Chair, thank you for your time this evening. I'm Trevor Barger, Tempe, Arizona 85281. I come to you today as a private citizen concerned about the future of Tempe and as a representative of private landowners in close proximity to ASU in downtown. I live in downtown and want an urban, dense place with services, amenities, and a vibrant street life to support a widely varied population. I am an ASU alum and proud of my alma mater. I have talked with Charlie Friedrichs of Catellus and Manjula Voss. They're good friends of mine. We have worked together for a long time in the industry, and I trust them, and the industry trusts them. Our concern about granting density before the service agreements, we have concerns about that, particularly how services, open space, the lake, infrastructure, and maintenance will be paid for. Catellus promises that they will have the agreements done in a year, and I believe them in this case. Our concerns about public postings, that GRC meetings are posted differently than DRC hearings. Catellus also promises to post and advertise the sites similar to DRC hearings so that public participation is encouraged. And I believe them in this. We understand that Catellus needs the zoning to land commercial tenants that they have on the hook. We are really less concerned about commercial uses in this area. We have continued long-term concerns about residents on state land. How will services be paid for if no property and rental taxes are collected and paid to Tempe? And residents who may be able to vote for bonds and additional services if they are exempt from paying for them. Again, I think these are things that can be worked out in the long-term agreement between Catellus, ASU, and the City of Tempe. Separately, we are afraid that without these agreements, ASU could easily take advantage of Tempe. Looking out for Tempe, ASU has often not played fairly and should not be rewarded. This sort of height and density has been declared by ASU as inappropriate when it's near them, and it is a burden to them. They do not have the same opinion when it's away from them, near others, when it is necessary for ASU to make a profit, or when it burdens others. ASU is always saying, in the end, it is Tempe and ASU that will remain, and we need to get the greedy, for-profit profit-motive developers out of the way. ASU is not a magnanimous nonprofit. ASU complains about investors from far-off places like Phoenix and Scottsdale who are not rooted here. ASU top executives make more than $500,000 a year, also live in far-off places now, like Paradise Valley, and are developing for profit, not to make a setting that they will one day call home again. Top ASU real estate executives are paid $250,000 to $500,000 per year, often 2 to 3 times the private industry rate for project managers. These are salaries that the state cannot support, and so they need to make, as I say, a greedy developer profit from Tempe to attract highly paid executives to feed the machine. I hate to make this sound like a bad thing, because it is how we encourage investment. But this is how ASU talks about such private development. It should be known that ASU is at the top of housing costs for public and private education facilities in the state. $1,500 to $4,000 more per student per year, per student per year than NAU or GCU. These costs are comparable to the luxury apartments at W6. As a result of an ASU partnership, these are generally owned and operated by ACC, a private for-profit company. Sorry, a public for-profit company. ASU adds approximately 800 students per year who need housing, and very little new housing is added to the existing short supply. ASU opposes private development of student housing in downtown Tempe. And ASU has chosen not to use this land that has been purchased with public tax dollars or donated to the university for the much-needed student housing, but instead to make a profit for the university. Again, I want an urban Tempe that takes services, that takes amenities. Even though it may not sound like it, I think ASU's solution is clever. ASU needs to pay to attract talent, such as Duke Ryder and Jim Runn, who are people at the top of their fields, and we are lucky to have them here. However, it is unfair that ASU should be able to develop in this way while blocking other nonprofits, paying staff far less, private landholders, and private developers from doing the same. One private developer, I'm not representing tonight, who wanted to bring much-needed residential product to Tempe, described ASU as the nail in the coffin for their project. ASU would and has opposed similar development, height, and density in private development projects. ASU is not limiting residential to 7 stories, although its execs at ASU insist this is the appropriate urban form against the advice of their own top advisors and colleges of urban design. We have 2 other points of concern for the well-being of Tempe. One, ASU has not fulfilled their existing agreements with the city to rezone other property in downtown to MU Ed, and I fear this is a sign of things to come. 2, we have a growing concern that development like Opus's $100 million housing project, which was originally opposed by ASU, and which will be a great addition to downtown Tempe, and will add to our property tax and rental tax base, may be purchased by ASU. If it does, it comes off both tax rolls, while we, Tempe, are still on the hook to provide services. While this might seem a little far-fetched, ACC, ASU's for-profit student housing provider, now owns 922 Place on Apache, and if it is purchased by ASU, it will come off the tax rolls as feared. I am torn. While we support tall, dense urban development in downtown, we understand and believe we need to approve the GPA and zoning so Catellus can move forward. They've been working in good faith, and they've promised agreements within a year. We also need to oppose ASU's unfair development behavior and do not think it should be rewarded. If the GPA and zoning approval is recommended tonight,
please voice your strong concerns that you share about this with Tempe residents and leadership. Thank you.
Any questions? If not, the next individual, Deb Gain-Braley.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. I speak for myself and for North Tempe Neighborhood Association, which represents the neighborhoods north of Tempe Town Lake. We discussed this project at our meeting for April, and Gamage Burnham was very conscientious and nice to come and help us understand some of it. I really appreciate that. They facilitated. Many of the neighbors still feel apprehensive about the city services and how costs are going to be borne. There's a concern for loss of horizons and recreation and green areas, possibly a park or two in the area, because there's so much of the golf course being lost. And we feel a strong sense that we lack understanding of how the proposed JRC is going to work, and would like more information on that and public awareness. Right now, Tempe is struggling to afford additions to park officers to keep transients and drugs out of our parks. We don't have enough vouchers for the homeless who need housing, and yet we're going to subsidize ASU's project. And so there's a little concern there. As far as JRCs, we'd like to understand processes, roles, responsibilities, because this is a new thing. I realize JRC has been here before, but people I've talked to don't understand what it is, and I don't understand what it is, and don't find much on the city website about it. We would prefer to have more information be made public, and we would prefer it to be ongoing, not just today, just for this, but the transportation people report to the council periodically. The parks people report to the city people periodically. Why can't there be some kind of a requirement for progress to the city council? Because it's all going to go through JRC and be this vague thing that doesn't always involve city council the same way. So anyway, that's concerns. I really appreciate the opportunity today.
Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this? I'm not seeing anyone, so we'll close the public hearing portion. Would the applicant like to address any of the issues that have been raised?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I can address a couple of them. We certainly understand the apprehension everybody feels in terms of how this is going to develop. And again, it's developed over a 20-year time period. And we're going to start with rezoning and the general plan amendments, which are kind of cleanup issues that we've been working with the council. Certainly, as Deb mentioned, and it is our intent to keep talking with everyone. We've had red zoning signs up since February, or probably earlier than that, since January. Now we're in May in terms of when the neighborhood meetings were. But we've been trying to make an outreach effort to talk to people. We've some information on the council. We're going to start, this is going to be a long-term process, and it is our intent to keep working with the council. And as Trevor mentioned, in terms of the JRC, we will, that is the body, obviously, that has been established to hear MUED, but those are public meetings. And as we'll try to make sure that there's more outreach to people who want to go to a JRC meeting. I'm happy to address transportation issues. I guess Brian can address them a little more. In terms of transportation, we are working with, and we've been working with the city for over a year. We're going to continue to work with them in terms of how the transportation grid works, the transportation infrastructure that will be in place. We are working with the city in terms of an IGA that's related to services and funding of services. And while that may not be probably a topic of discussion for here tonight in terms of our zoning, we continue to talk to the city in terms of how services will be funded. Just to mention, this district, as opposed to educational buildings on the ASU campus, all the private buildings on this district will be paying sales tax. The hotels will be paying bed tax. All the multifamily will pay a rental sales tax. All these private developers will be paying the impact fee that as any private developer. So it is the intent that they will pay the development fees to go through the process. They will pay the site plan fee and all the other fees that are paid, building permit fees, to go through the process. So that's different from when ASU builds a building. So there is money coming into the city, and we're working with the council to talk about the other services. With that, Brian and I are happy to answer any other questions.
Can you just, for the benefit of the audience listening on television, explain what the notification requirements are with JRC? Is there still posting requirement? How do you get that message out regarding?
Madam Chair, Suparna might be a better person. I can tell you generally, but maybe Suparna is a better person to talk about the JRC notification requirement.
Madam Chair, right now, the way the code is, it is treated as a development plan review, that instead of coming to the DRC, will actually go to the JRC. So other than, the agenda publishing, right now, there is no other notification on a case-by-case basis. But for the application process is still the same. It will be filed with the city. City staff reviews, goes through all the site plan, preliminary site plan, formal application. City staff gets the comments get addressed, and then once the plans are ready to be approved, they go in front of the JRC. It's a publicly held meeting. JRC meetings, regular meetings of JRC, right now hasn't been happening on a regular basis because there has not been any projects in the last year. But the meeting is always if it's a regular meeting, it's always going to be on the first Wednesday of every month. It's once a month meeting.
And just again, for anyone watching who doesn't know, JRC stands for Joint Review Commission. It's made up from members appointed by the city and by ASU with one joint appointment. So it is not something that will come before this body. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you describe, Suparna, can you also describe the appeals process for anything going before the JRC?
The JRC, if the project gets denied, it goes to the president of ASU for the first appeals, and then and then the next appeal is to City Council. So that's how the appeal process for it works.
Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was curious, Mr. Barger brought up a point about when bond issues are voted on by the city, the residents of Tempe, would those residents that are on this land also be obligated to pay that at this point, or would they be able to opt out because they are on state land?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Amorosi, the residents on this land will be living in multifamily apartment complexes, so they will be in the same position as someone living in an apartment complex on Broadway.
With one exception, and that is that the apartment buildings will not be paying property tax, whereas the apartment buildings on private property do pay property tax.
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I just have one correction. The apartment buildings do pay an in lieu tax to ASU. So the residents will be paying the same amount. The service, that fee that the apartment buildings are paying to ASU are going to fund the athletic facilities, which is what happened with the state legislature put together this district. The intent was they would develop to help fund athletic facilities. But as to the resident living in an apartment building, that person is probably paying the same amount as the person on Broadway or Southern in having that same, they're going to charge the same, probably rent is going to be the same or higher. But, I don't know when they vote on bonds if they'll feel, are you concerned that they would not vote for the bond or vote for the bond? I if that answers the question.
Vice Chair Lyon, did you have?
Well, I mean, as you've pointed out, it's essentially a hidden tax that these residents, the money that they would otherwise be paying to fund services for city are going to be developing the athletics. And I mean, it's a clever way of funding those projects without saying we're raising taxes to fund those things. But I would actually like to know if you have a response to the comment that we heard earlier with regard to Mr. Barger essentially said that pressure from ASU led to the demise of several mixed-use projects. Is there anything that you or your client would like to say in response to that?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Lyon, I don't think we have a lot to say about that. I mean, I think Trevor's referring to, some opposition from ASU earlier, and I'll let ASU's opposition speak for itself. And that was a council decision.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Labate.
I think it might be helpful, and this can come from the applicant or staff, to discuss what was brought up about services. So, and actually, as far as the just all improvements get made, how that's going to happen in the future. Typically, if a zoning for something, a large project came through, we would see, how Dorsey Lane, that is going to be an arterial. It's going to be this, how these street improvements are going to be like this, and how utilities will be accommodated, how all that stuff is going to work. In this case, because it is an ASU property, the process is different. Things will go to the JRC. It's going to be different, but it might be helpful for folks in the audience and watching to hear more about how those services and infrastructure will be assuredly provided.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, it could tell us the master developer is responsible for the infrastructure, but I'm going to have Brian come and talk about how the infrastructure is being put in, they're paying for it in terms of streets and water, sewer.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, the master developer is responsible for designing, installing, and funding all of the public infrastructure, the backbone infrastructure that will be required to serve the various uses within the district. Some of that will be certainly public infrastructure like any other subdivision, if you will, within the city. And in those cases, we certainly will go through typical city review processes and get city approval for those improvements. In some cases, the streets will be private, and we are working with the city right now to determine which streets will be public and which streets will be private. In those cases, we actually are working with city staff to, even on the private streets, to get agreement as to the sections related to those streets in terms of the widths and so forth. We are, in all cases, whether those streets are public and private, the district itself will be responsible for installing all improvements behind the curb in terms of sidewalks and streetscape amenities, and maintaining those, as is the case in all other parts of town. Essentially the development, as Manjula mentioned earlier, is paying all sales taxes, all fees, everything with the one exception of the city's share of the property tax. But all other fees are being paid. The infrastructure is being paid for by the master developer, by the district. The maintenance will be paid for by the district, with the exception of the public streets, as it would be the case in any other part of the city. So for almost every instance, this is being treated just like any other development within the city. And there will be significant dollars flowing into the city's coffers as a result of the economic activity that occurs here.
Thank you. Sparna, would you mind just kind of explaining how the approval of all of that infrastructure will work? Who's approving it, when it's getting approved, how people will know that the city is making sure that's all going to be there, including traffic studies and all of that?
Typically, this is going to be just like any other application that comes in to the city. So the application for a specific private development comes to the city. All of the city, different departments of the city will look at if there are upsizing in infrastructure requirement for water, sewer lines, or street improvements, or traffic studies required for, signalization purposes, or traffic or street lane increasing the width of lanes, or creating right turn, whatever those needs are. Those are all evaluated as part of that application, just like any private development that is evaluated on a case-by-case basis right now. So the process for review for each of these developments is still going to be the same, and will be evaluated on that in that respect, and ensuring all the departments ensuring that all the infrastructure needs are being met.
Okay, thank you. But to be clear, that all happens piece by piece as each part of this project comes forward, not in an overall master plan for the entire project?
Well, currently, till the subsequent phases are being developed, if there is a project, say, subject to this approval of the rezoning and the GPA, right now it's going to be on a case-by-case. There's a larger discussion happening in terms of the street network, how that's going to be developed, private versus public, the services, in terms of police and fire. Those are larger conversations that are happening at city council level with intergovernmental agreements and things that are being worked out right now. So there is, it's going to be addressed, whether it's with the project or, say, for example, a street network as part of a bigger master plan. So it's going to be addressed in one way or the other. It's not as detailed as at this level. You are going to see some level of detail when the overlay district comes in, because that's a text amendment to our code, and that will set some development standards and some design standards. So you will see some of that in the subsequent phases, so that'll give you a better idea about the density being proposed by different sub-districts for the whole master plan area.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that's helpful to know, because this feels fairly sparse as far as an application, and I think it sounds like it's somewhat a result of the way the process works for this type of application. But it's good to know that it isn't just okay, and then the applicant will be able to do more or less whatever they want, that there's still a lot of that gets worked out. That's helpful to know.
I'd like to clarify again for the people that are watching this on Channel 11 that the street grid that is shown, that it's the yellow streets that will be maintained by the city, and the other colored streets will be private streets that will be maintained by the district. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's what the graphic is intended to show with respect to the pink streets. Hopefully they look pink to you there. Those are tentative at this point. We're working toward final resolution on that. But right now, yes, that is the intent.
Commissioner Summers.
And they're not going to be painted pink for the record, correct?
If you would like.
No, that's okay. Just a comment, I guess. There's a lot going on up in this area. There's a lot of development happening right now in Marina Heights and along both sides of the lake. The amount of special event traffic and activity we have in this area is fantastic. And if we built Rural Road at 12 lanes, that might be big enough. So I guess I just encourage, I know that the people at the table doing this negotiation are thinking about this, but in terms of the public expectations out there, you can't make a road big enough. This is going to be congested at times and heavily traveled, and isn't that fantastic? So let's plan for rail and bus and things other than cars, and make sure to place infrastructure in ways like power lines and water and sewer lines, so that when the time comes to install those things, we don't have to move that infrastructure.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Other comments? Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I look at this as like baby steps, because it's such a large project, and I think it makes sense to me that you'd want to make the parcel that's agricultural match the parcels to the west of it along the Rio Salado Parkway. That seems to give developers a sense of ease. So when they look at this, it's all consistent. And I'm just hoping, though, that the city on their end will have all these IGAs signed before the first shovel breaks any ground. So that way there's no confusion to the developers what's expected of them. But at this point, it seems like we need to start somewhere, and this would be a good spot to create it. Thanks.
Any other comments? If not, we'll close the hearing and commissioners can discuss. Do you have anything to say that hasn't already been said? Commissioner Probati.
I guess my mic is still on. I guess I'd like to say at least that it is exciting, that there is a lot that will be happening down here, and there's stuff coming, and it'll bring density, and it'll be an urban area. I'm a little hesitant because we don't get to see a lot of it right now, but it is baby steps, and there are processes in place for it to be, regulated and controlled, and multiple parties at the table. So I guess at the end of the day, I'm excited to see it develop.
Okay. Other comments? Vice Chair Lyon.
I think it is fantastic and exciting, and also just a little nerve-wracking. I appreciate that we are a very small part of the process, and it's really not for us to say very much about the project. So that leaves me a slight uneasy feeling, as we're making a tiny contribution to something we know very little about. I think overall it's going to be a very good thing for the city. Having said that, I can't help but have some small reservations, and I just hope that everything goes the right directions.
Any other comments? Commissioner Johnson?
I'll echo that. I too am concerned a little bit about the ambiguity of what's actually going to happen, and that we wouldn't be seeing this as the DRC typically would see other private development. But yeah, there's the procedure in place with the JRC, something that I'm not that familiar with, but I have a feeling that a lot of us are going to get a lot more familiar with what goes on with the JRC in the future with this project, and that's what's in place for this type of a development. I'm excited to see something other than a golf course in this area. Of course, the traffic is already terrible in this area at times of the day, and it's going to get worse. And so those public options, the streetcar coming down towards Marina Heights and hopefully continuing along Rio Salado, I think will help alleviate some of that. And I like to see. I did like the description of the bicycle lanes, the added bicycle lanes, those additional diagrams that show connectivity to downtown and to the light rail. I think that's all I have. I'm excited to see this developed. I am anxious and concerned a little bit about the process itself because of my lack of knowledge of that process.
Commissioner Summers, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I share Mr. Gates's desire to know a little more about the details, and my commissioners, fellow commissioners, having that same need. I want to know about the buildings. I want to know about how wide is the street going to be. Is there going to be a detached sidewalk? What about the landscaping? And all that comes in the next level. And I guess I see this process as more of a cleanup because property is kind of all over the place in terms of what you can do on different pieces of this property. And also a streamlining of the process. So it's kind of odd that we're voting to take it out of our court to make the process go faster, but that's kind of what this feels like. So if that is what's required to make development streamlined and happen faster, I'm on board. So I'll be supporting.
And I've expressed these concerns before, and I understand that we have a master developer and we have who's not technically the applicant. We have received mixed messages from ASU. I think it's a little disingenuous to want to continue to put student housing on property other than ASU-owned property. And I think that it's very nice that you're going to collect in lieu taxes. That does impact our local schools, however, and it's just something that I wish there was a little more transparency for the citizens to really understand what the impact of that is. I understand that the legislature has created that vehicle for funding the athletic district, but that said, I have extremely mixed feelings about this. I'm not sure how I'm voting. Question for staff, can we deal with this in 3 separate motions, separating the 3 components? Or is it only 2 components?
You could take it all in one motion if you wanted to.
I know, but I don't want to do that.
Oh, you want, so, okay, it's up to you, Madam Chair, then, if you wanted to get the 3.
Is that something that the commission would like, or if I'm the only one that wants that, then it can be voted on with one motion? For one motion. Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Sumner.
Madam Chair, a motion to approve ASU Athletic Facilities District Planning Area PL 160433, including all 3 elements, the general plan, the land use, and the zoning.
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved by Commissioner Sumners and seconded by Commissioner Labate. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And opposed? So it passes by a vote of 5-1 with Chairman Spears in the dissent. The next item on our agenda is announcements from staff and commission members. Are there any announcements?
For the May 23rd agenda, we have a request for a general plan density map amendment, zoning map amendment, planned area development or development plan review, and a use permit for a mixed-use development for Apache and Oak located on 1461 East Apache Boulevard. That's all we have for that agenda.
Okay. And just a reminder that we will be possibly short. We will be short 1 member at our next meeting and possibly 2. So if you have any conflicts coming up, please let staff know as soon as possible so the applicant can be informed. That we're adjourned.